On your Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, we continue our prolific run of playing stupid little games with our dear pal Vivek Jacob, with a little game I like to call Playoff Proof or Playoffs. Oof.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Wednesday, May the 7th, and I am your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. You can follow my work over on Blue Sky. You can find the show on Instagram, and you can join us, as always, for free in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. Link in the description of the podcast. Come hang out, be part of our listener community. Let's get right to it. On today's show, we're playing a stupid little game, as we usually do in the offseason, with our dear pal Vivek Jacob. I promise at some point there will be some production added to liven up the stupid little game thing that we're doing here regularly on the show, but it takes some time to do that. And frankly, I'm really enjoying watching playoff sports and stuff at night, as opposed to being knee deep in an audition soundtrack thingy. Either way, today's game is all about the playoffs, which have been awesome. And I've been wanting to kind of infuse the NBA playoffs into our Raptors talk any way we can. And so on today's show, we're going to play a little game called Playoff Proof or Playoffs, Oof, where we dig into the members of your Toronto Raptors and figure out which teams would they be playoff proof on, which teams would they start for, which teams would they be part of a rotation for, and which teams would they just not see the court for at all. And here to do that, as promised, is our dear pal from Sportsnet and his Raptors in 7 newsletter. It is Vivek Jacob. Big V, how the hell are you, pal?
I'm good. So just to double check with you, your entire hey was muted. I didn't want to
muted.
Like, I couldn't hear the hey at all. Everything after that I heard. So I don't know if it's a me problem or a you problem.
It's a very real possibility that the mic cut out. You may know, if you're a regular listener of the podcast, that sometimes I'm so loud and animal from the Muppets like that I crash the mic during the hey at the start of the show. Sometimes I have to edit around it very creatively. And so I'm just going to leave it now because we've commented upon it and now it all makes sense. So we're good. Thanks for that, pal.
I didn't want to take away from your amazing intro, so I was like, I'll let him do the full intro. If he wants to keep it in, he can keep it in. But yeah, I just thought I should let you know. But I am super excited for this game. I think it'll be a fun one. And besides that, I've just been enjoying the basketball, man. Just so many fun games. Aaron Gordon is just on a buzzer-beating tear. And and you love to see it. These are like the flowers he deserved for, the 2016 dunk contest. Yeah.
Kyle Lowry just stewing at home, watching Aaron Gordon succeed, not having any fun with that. Sorry, before we get into the game, just in case I do need to do some editing, I'm just going to do a quick hey. So everyone, got it. Like you heard it in case you didn't hear it off the top. And I can just use it to cut in later if I really need to. Hey, what's going on? All right, let's go. Back to the podcast. We're playing playoff proof or playoffs. Oof. Let's start with Scottie Barnes. And again, the sort of parameters for this game, when it comes to the Raptors starters, we're basically going to look at which teams would these guys start for among the 8 remaining teams in the NBA playoffs. And then when we get to the bench guys, we'll rattle off maybe some teams we'd like to see them play for as kind of deep rotation guys, if they can get in at all. Let's start with Scottie. This one feels like the easiest one, just on pure talent alone. He's starting for every team in the playoffs, right? The sort of challenge with this exercise is all these teams are built not with Scottie Barnes on the roster and not with the sort of complimenting him in mind. And so it's really just a talent thing more than anything else. Maybe the fit of these lineups is a little bit more iffy if you replace someone with Scottie Barnes, but talent-wise, I feel like most of these teams would have quite an upgrade if they replaced a 4th or 5th starter with Scottie Barnes. Do you agree with that, Big V?
So from a talent standpoint, I agree, but I was looking at the fit aspect of it. So,
okay, sure.
For example, with the Thunder, would they start, in terms of the spacing and all that, would they start Scottie ahead of the obvious candidate would be Luguentz Dort? And
interesting. I have a different take on that, but carry on.
I guess you could go small too and have him in place of Isaiah Hartenstein.
Or playoff fraud Chet Holmgren, of course.
and so I think that's where you get into the debate of like the fit. And so looking at that, I think I had him starting for about 12 of the 16 teams.
I thought we were only going the 8 remaining teams. We are not on the same page here at all.
So yeah, I think that was a fun aspect to look at. Just in terms of the fit. I think if you were to look at where he'd fit best, I think if you were to put him on the Knicks in place of Josh Hart,
I had that written down.
I think that would look fantastic because you get the talent upgrade, you get some of that playmaking, you get some of the scoring that Josh Hart doesn't necessarily give you. You probably give Hart the edge on the hustle meter because that guy can hustle. But I think that would probably be the optimal fit for him. And then defensively, if you've got Scottie, OG, and Bridges on the perimeter, that's scary.
That's pretty fun. Yeah, I had it was the Knicks as my second favorite fit for Scottie Barnes, replacing that Josh Hart. Of course, this considers. I'll get to that in a second, but we have to first, entertain the reality where you replace Josh Hart in the starting 5, and Tom Thibodeau implodes because he can't play him for 46 minutes a game. So you have to count in. They have an interim coach filling in. David Adelman's been fine for the Nuggets. Maybe someone on the Knicks bench could do just fine too. But you have to consider that. My favorite fit for Scottie, and look, does this make me an absolute sicko perv? A little bit. Is it okay if I say the Pacers, where you just slot him in for either Nembhard or Aaron Nesmith, and you get the Siakam Barnes 3-4 with a spacing big man and Miles Turner that we all really dreamed we could one day see? Yeah, I want to see that. That sounds awesome. I think the Pacers would be incredible. Their defense would be significantly better. Obviously, they're doing just fine right now, though. It took the Cavs having an all-time meltdown in the last minute of last night's game to hang on and, for the Pacers to win game 2. But yeah, I think Scottie would make them way more playoff-proof defensively as you get further and further into the postseason. As good as Nesmith and Nembhard are, I think if you have Nesmith or Nembhard be your 6th man, while Scottie, Siakam, and Turner are your 3, 4, 5, that's really interesting to me. I love the fit there. When it comes to Scottie starting, I did go through all of the teams in the remaining in the postseason and just kind of, again, gamed it out as to who he'd replace in the starting 5. Boston's a tough one just because Boston's so good, but on pure talent, I think he replaces Drew Holiday at this point. Not a great shooter, obviously, that takes away from what they do well, but they have 4 other good shooters at all times. And a Scottie, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, 3, 4, 5, pretty damn interesting, like that sort of Pacers mix would be, and that Knicks mix would be. I think he starts for Julius Randle on the Wolves, just like a better defensive player. Similar in terms, Randall's a better shooter overall, but I don't think teams really care about Randall shooting in the same way they wouldn't care about Scottie. And I think Scottie's a better guy kind of making stuff happen out of those, swings to him in the corner, that type of stuff.
So Minnesota was one of the teams I didn't have him starting.
Interesting. Okay.
Just because
I think he probably starts. Randall Barnes, I think, is kind of a toss up, personal preference thing, but I think Barnes is just a better player. And, Randall had a great first round against the Lakers, up against a team now where, I guess the Warriors are also very small, but, he wasn't so good in game 1. I'm curious to see if the Julius Randle playoff renaissance continues here. I'm not really banking on it myself as a non-Julius Randle believer generally. We mentioned the Knicks and the Pacers. I think the Cavs are really interesting because I think on just pure talent as that sort of 3 in between the 2 guards and the 2 bigs, he's an upgrade over DeAndre Hunter or Max Strus. The fit gets a little bit weird, but maybe you just go and say no one's ever scoring on Scottie Barnes, Evan Mobley, and Jared Allen in a 3-4-5. And we win every game 75-72. OKC, I think you probably start him over Hartenstein and just go Barnes and Holmgren in the front court, or again, bench Chet Holmgren, the playoff dropper, and have Hartenstein start. I think he starts over Podziemski for Golden State, probably. Denver's interesting because of the fit, but pure talent-wise, you probably start him over Christian Brown and just kind of figure it out around Jokic. The fit with him and Jokic is kind of very strange considering they kind of operate in similar spaces, but
Denver was another one.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. But yeah, Pacers and Knicks, I think, are the two most interesting fits. If you were to drop him in, he probably becomes the second or third best guy at either of those teams. Although, again, both those teams are really good.
So the other team I did have in there that I thought would be a good fit was the Clippers. Obviously, you were looking at the 8 teams, and I was looking at
just
the 16.
winners,
But
just winners here.
but I threw the Clippers in there just in that that Chris Dunn slash Nicholas Batum spot, and I think if he were to be there, it would be a big bonus for their defense. And I think again, having some of that playmaking, they wouldn't have to go get Ben Simmons. And I think he'd be a pretty nice fit there.
No doubt. So we'll do this going into after we finish talking about each guy. We have to kind of boil it down to one question here. Scottie Barnes, playoff proof or playoffs? Oof.
I'm gonna go with playoff proof. I think right from that first playoff debut that we saw against Philly on the road and the way he started up that game, it's like, he doesn't seem to be fazed by the bright lights. And I think that he is someone that you can rely on that big stage.
100%. We're going to come back on the other side here, Big V, get into Brandon Ingram, who, of course, we have not seen play for the Toronto Raptors. But before we see him play for the Raptors, we got to drop him on some other teams, of course. We'll do that to continue the show in just one sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Open Phone. If you're running a business, you know that every missed call is money left on the table. Think about the last time you had an urgent need, maybe a plumber for a service or a service provider, whatever it might be. If the person didn't answer, did you wait? No, you probably moved on to the next possible company to go and fix whatever it is you need fixed. That's why you need Open Phone. Open Phone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or computer. Open Home lets you manage business calls and text from a single app. The shared inbox feature is a game changer. Your team can jump into any conversation instantly without missing a beat. And their AI agent handles after-hours calls, answers common questions, and captures leads so you never miss a customer. Go check them out. It's a great way to ensure that you're kind of getting the most. Running a small business is hard. Have this Open Phone work for you as one of your employees, essentially, to make things easier. Open Phone is offering my listeners 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's OPENPHONE.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, Open Phone will port them over at no extra charge. Open Phone, no missed calls, no missed customers. Back at it here, playing playoff proof for playoffs. Oof, with our pal Vivek Jacob from Sportsnet and Raptors in 7. Moving on to Brandon Ingram. This one was almost easier for me than Scottie Barnes. I think Brandon Ingram finds a way to start for every team in the playoffs. That level of shot making, I don't think there's a team out there that's like turning their nose up at adding a guy who once averaged 27, 6, and 6 in a playoff series against the defending Western Conference champions back in 2022 over 6 games. Lots of interesting potential fits here for Brandon Ingram as well. But do you agree that he's probably slotting into the starting 5 for every team that's currently left in the playoffs?
Yeah, pretty much. I think that's what I was looking at. I think there's maybe a fit question that you ask with a couple of teams, but beyond that, sure. I think that there's a lot of teams that would love to have Brandon Ingram right now. And if you want to get into best fits, I think I was looking at a team like Denver, and he would go into that Christian Brown spot, and I think he would do a heck of a job in that role. And I think all of a sudden now you've got the scoring of Jamal and Jokic, and you've got Aaron Gordon as the 4th guy. You've got Brandon Ingram in there. I think that would be incredible to watch, and I think they'd be devastating, even more devastating to a lot of teams.
Yeah, good luck ever stopping them. And like Ingram as a guy to throw out there in those second units when Jokic is sitting as well would be pretty nice, I think. I think my favorite fit would be with the Cavs as that 5th starter. There was like a time where, I think a lot of us in the offseason were entertaining like, oh, could they trade like Jarrett Allen for Brandon Ingram to fill in? What if he just got both? And he becomes your 3 to sort of, be the go between those 2 guards and those 2 bigs. It brings the shooting, brings some shot making. If you run into a matchup where, say, maybe you're playing the Celtics, for example, where Mitchell and Garland, if healthy, are running up against like some really nasty point of attack defenders, you can funnel your offense through Brandon Ingram. You can run your guards off the ball, and you can kind of still get by that way. Just a nice fail-safe, again, for teams that have like a lot of guard dependence, I think, is Brandon Ingram. Some other teams I think would be nice fit. I mean, the Warriors, I think, could just use anyone to kind of replace Brandon Podziemski in the starting five. Nothing against Pods, but he's just not quite up to the level of a lot of these other guys. And, the playoffs are a meat grinder. It takes a lot. I could see him fitting in nicely. I mean, the Nuggets one is great. I could see him again in like the Neesmith spot or Nembhard spot with the Pacers to add a little bit of offensive juice to that team. God, that team would just never, ever be stopped, I think, if you had Brandon Ingram in one of those spots. Yeah, he to me is maybe the most clearly playoff-proof guy on this team. Do you agree? Playoff-proof or playoffs oof for Brandon Ingram?
Yeah, playoff-proof for sure. And, I was, in terms of the couple of teams that didn't make it to the second round, I think Detroit and Milwaukee would be super easy fits.
Yeah.
I mean, Giannis would have loved to have Brandon Ingram in that first round.
It's going to be awesome next year. I can't wait. It's going to look so good.
So I think Ingram, probably the most playoff-proof player on the roster right now. I think that he's shown it. I think that just the way the game is played today, he would absolutely thrive in it. And then obviously he's got his go-to spots that you need in the playoffs.
Yeah. Stick him on the Thunder in place of Lou Dort as well. And then you don't get the thing where Lou Dort shuts his ass down in the playoffs either, right? It's just, they got to be on the same team, and it's lovely. Again, Ingram was very hurt for those playoffs, so it's not too alarming. And also Lou Dort is a maniac. Let's move on to maybe the most interesting guy for me, Jakob Poeltl. I'm not sure he's starting for every playoff team. I'm not sure he's starting for most of the remaining playoff teams. I think he would be a key rotation player for just about every team, except for maybe one or two. But there's one team I think he's like clearly, obviously starting for. I'm curious what your read is here on Jakob Poeltl. We've not really seen him play in the playoffs much. He played a couple series with the Spurs, I think, very early on, if I'm not mistaken, in that sort of post-Kawhi trade DeMar era. I think he went to the second round one year, or maybe lost in the first round. I can't remember exactly how it all worked, but it's an interesting one because he doesn't shoot. He'd be someone who gets schemed against, I think, pretty obviously, because non-shooting bigs often do in the playoffs. But what he does, the offensive rebounding, the finishing, the rim protection, all that stuff, it's very useful, very helpful. I think defensively, he's a little bit more scheme versatile than some of your more lumbering bigs. Where are you at with which teams would be starting Jakob Poeltl? Again, I have one. I'm curious what you think, though.
So I think the one team that came to mind was OKC. Would they put him in place of Isaiah Hartenstein? And then I think the other team I thought about was who did I have? Let's see here. I think the rest of them are just like teams that are got eliminated in the first round. So obviously,
can I give you my team then?
Yeah,
I think he clearly starts for the Warriors. I know the spacing and all that, but like, I just think they need someone who's tall, and you place him in there in place of Podziemski, for example. You go with the starting five of Curry, Hield, Butler, Draymond, and Poeltl. I think especially in this Wolves series, they got game one last night, kind of miraculously with Steph going out. But I think if you want to actually contend with that Wolves team over 7 games, you got to have some size. You got to have some beef. You got to be able to grab the offensive rebounds and kind of go toe-to-toe. And I think Poeltl's had some success against Rudy Gobert in the past as well. I think that's one that stands out as like a pretty good fit for me. And I think he would definitely start for Golden State. All these other teams have really good centers. And so I'm not sure he's starting even over Hartenstein, although he might be, like, based on what we saw in game one against the Thunder, he might be the best option to throw on Jokic if he were on that team, considering how much trouble Hartenstein seemed to have and how like totally incapable of holding his ground Chet Holmgren was, which is not surprising considering Jokic is like 3 Chet Holmgrens wide. But yeah, it's hard to, all these other teams, right? The Celtics, he's probably not starting on the Celtics because of all the shooting they like from their picks.
Yep.
He's probably not starting for the Cavs because Jared Allen's amazing. He's probably not starting for the Pacers because Miles Turner is so inherent to what they do, though I am kind of intrigued by, Turner, Poeltl as like a big front court. We've seen in the past teams have to go double big that could be kind of cool. Siakam at the 3, you just get Jumbo. There's something there probably. So there's maybe 2 teams he gets in there for that you can kind of pencil it in, but the Warriors feel like the only sure thing for me.
I think that's a fair shout.
Fit. Yeah.
I guess I was probably maybe overthinking just like the spacing and, the success that lineup had being small, right? With Draymond at the 5, Jimmy, Steph, Pods, and Moody. And so I guess I was kind of hell-bent on that needing to be the kind of prototype that they would prefer in the starting 5. In terms of the teams that got eliminated in the first round, I think that one is a no-brainer for me, the Lakers.
Oh God, yeah.
They would have loved to have him for that series.
Who were you just talking about? My brain just totally stopped working. The Warriors. Like I think of Andrew Bogut a lot when I think of Jakob Poeltl and kind of how
that's fair.
Bogut thrived in those situations, just as like a connective big man, no space at all, but grab rebounds, protected the rim, nice connective passer. I think that would be kind of the role, a fellow Utah guy with, I think, better politics than Andrew Bogut filling in there. Playoff proof or playoffs oof for Jakob Poeltl. I think this is a bit of an interesting one.
This is an interesting one, but I do think with the way size has been a factor, I do lean towards Yak being playoff proof, and I do think that there's going to be certain moments of a game where he's not going to be the ideal choice, and you need to go small or whatever it might be. But I do think that for the most part he's playoff proof. It helps that he's upped his free throw percentage. So
sure does.
Yeah. So that's another little bonus in there. So I'll go playoff proof with Yak.
Yeah, I think if this were 2018 and we were talking about like peak Warriors ball where like anyone who couldn't shoot was getting totally targeted and played off of the floor, bit of a different story. I think, the size, the rebounding, all that stuff plays in the playoffs now, I think. And so I'm with you, playoff proof for him. We're going to come back into the side, get to Immanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett, then maybe rattle through a couple of the bench guys to see where they'd fit. Do all the Raptors bench guys just slot in as the 8th man on the Nuggets very beautifully? Probably, but let's talk about IQ and Barrett coming up to close things out in just one sec. All right, wrapping things up here on your the hell days it Wednesday episode of Locked On Raptors, where we're playing playoff proof or playoffs. Oof. Let's get to Immanuel Quickley, who I think probably gets minutes for just about every team in the playoffs because shooting is valuable and ball handling is valuable. I think he'd be a killer 6th man for most of these teams. I think there's probably one team I'm certain he would start for, and I'd actually really like what the fit would look like. Beyond that, I think you can, there's personal preference and fit and, defense versus offense type stuff you can kind of weigh. But where are you at here with Immanuel Quickley and what his potential good fits would be? And we can get into sort of, because he probably slots in as a 6th man on most of these playoff teams, maybe we get into which team you'd like to see him most as a 6th man for too.
Well, that's interesting. I do have one very obvious, clear fit that I think he would thrive.
Let's say it at the same time. 3, 2, 1. Minnesota. Hey!
I mean, clear upgrade over Mike Conley, and I think putting him next to the size on the wings and then Gobert on the back line would be an amazing fit. And then you look at the pop threat that he has. You look at him being able to play off of guys like Ant and Randall. I think it's a no-brainer fit.
Quickley, Edwards, McDaniels, Randall, Gobert, super fun. Quickley, Edwards, DiVincenzo, McDaniels, Gobert, all really fun potential lineups. Yeah, I'm super into that. And with Ant being such an on-ball guy now, I think you could totally weaponize a lot of Quickley's off-ball work too. He'd be awesome on that team. Very, very cool fit. The guy I have is, the team I have that is the place that would most welcome Quickley's skill set as a 6th man is, funnily enough, the New York Knicks. I think having another guy on that team that can dribble would be really valuable for them. Brunson obviously carries a massive burden for that team. If you could scale him down from 44 minutes to 38 or something like that, and throw in Quickley just to, take over the Deuce McBride minutes, just run offense, get threes up, that type of thing. They're not a high volume 3-point team. He'd certainly help with that. The fit with him and Towns on offense will be pretty disgusting. You obviously have the wing defense in between to cover for him. And again, we talked about Quickley's defense this year. I think he made some actual strides there and is at worst average and maybe slightly above based on what we saw from him this year. And, his on-court metrics certainly paint that picture as well. But yeah, tough to find another team where he starts for. Do you start him over Andrew Nembhard for Indy and just lean full offense?
Yeah, see, that's a tough one just because of who we've seen playoff Nembhard be.
Right.
and so I think that gets interesting. Again, it's just a fit thing. Talent-wise, you're picking Quickley, but I do think from a fit standpoint, it's like, man, if you could have Quickley just come in and be the sixth man, now it's like, whoa. So, yeah, that's probably what I lean towards.
The other team I thought of as a potential starter is Denver for Christian Brown, where you just have Murray and Quickley. It's small for sure, but like Porter, Gordon, Jokic is big enough, I think, that you can kind of withstand it. And then instead of only having Murray, Jokic pick and roll to work with, you get to also sprinkle in some Quickley, Jokic pick and roll. And that feels like a pretty good way to keep defenses on their toes and or on their heels or whatever, however you want defenses to be standing. That's great. That'd be kind of fun. I'm into that fit potentially as well. Let's get to RJ Barrett. Oh, sorry. We forgot to ask the all important question. Is Immanuel Quickley playoff proof or playoffs? Oof. Keeping in mind his playoff performances over the years have not been very good.
Yeah. So I think the way I would put this is he is playoff proof in like a sixth man role. I think sure. If he were to be in that role, I trust him enough. And I don't think we have any kind of evidence to see that he will be playoff proof as a starter. Sure. I think the theory of what we've seen of him and all of that suggests he should be. But I do think, especially on a Raptors team where, he's going to be relied on heavily for 3-point shooting, that kind of pressure and all of that. I think he's just a question mark. Like I wouldn't go as far to say TBD, like playoff oof. And but I think, I will say in terms of the 6-man role, put him on these teams where he could be in that, like Indy, for example, as we talked about, I would trust him enough.
Yeah, if the Raptors had an Anthony Edwards level guy, then I think playoff proof all day in a starting lineup. But he's being asked to do a lot. And hey, maybe Brandon Ingram changed that calculus too, right? We'll see. But Brandon Ingram is also not Anthony Edwards, so we'll see. Let's get to RJ Barrett. Fascinating one. I don't think he starts for any playoff team. Do you agree with that?
I mean, not from the teams that are remaining. I think. The Bucks don't have enough talent to say no to RJ Barrett.
Everyone starts for the Bucks. the Raptors' 8th best player would be like the 3rd best player on the Bucks at this point.
Orlando can't say no to him. Miami can't say no to him. I think Memphis would be an interesting one.
Yeah.
But yeah, of the teams remaining, no.
If you could make a case, I think it's probably Cleveland as the 5th starter at the 3. That sort of rotating revolving door of guys, but even then I just think you need more wing defense from that spot if you're
they already have so much offense.
They do, and I think just like when you have Mitchell and Garland as your 2-3 matchup wise, you just have to have someone who can go and guard guys, right? And and it's not like with Brandon Ingram, where I think Ingram's a better defender than Barrett, number one, but I also think Ingram just brings more on offense to just kind of tilt you that way further if you're going to lean fully into scoring 180 points a game. Like that's how you probably do it. Whereas Barrett, I don't think does that. And I don't think he moves the needle enough defensively to be all right with him as your starting 3, maybe over Christian Brown, although Brown's a much better defender than Barrett too. So I don't really see that either. I don't see him starting on the Pacers. I think the defense that Nesmith and Nembhard bring is way too important. I think you'd be, tilted too far the other way without him. It's a tough one. He'd probably fit into the rotation as like a 6th or 7th man for a lot of these teams for sure. But I'm having a hard time figuring out which teams you would actually be like a dyed-in-the-wool starter for. And it sucks. We all like RJ Barrett, but The playoff skill set is just, he doesn't bring the defensive stuff, and the offense is the 3-point shooting is something that teams will just gladly let him do. He fell off a little bit this year near the end of the season in particular. It's just a tough one to square. His playoff, I think I've talked about it, right? To me, RJ Barrett seems like a really excellent innings eater in the regular season whose playoff viability kind of goes down. And I think we've kind of seen that over the years, right? He's just not, he's had some moments in the postseason back in 2021 when they first made the playoffs, when he was still kind of a passable defender. That was, a nice time, but for the most part, it's been a tough go for him. And so, I'm having a hard time thinking of a team where he slots in as a starter.
An innings eater in the regular season who fades in the playoffs. Where have I seen that before?
Oh, the commenters are going to be so mad because the commenters are so mad whenever you say RJ Barrett isn't the greatest player in the history of the Toronto Raptors franchise. We like him. It's just we got to face facts. Playoff proof or playoffs oof for RJ Barrett.
Yeah, unfortunately, I am going to go with playoffs oof. I think there's definitely potential roles that he could fit into, like if he were to transition to a 6-man, and
the Nuggets could. I mean, this applies for every player and who's like a top 8 player in any team in the NBA. But the Nuggets would love him as their 7th man.
Yeah, exactly, right. And so you get him in there for somewhere between 15 to 25 minutes, depending on how he's going on the night, and you get that production, and that's probably very valuable to have. But as a starter, putting him in the starting 5, that's where, for me, I think I've seen enough to believe it'll be a playoff suit.
Yeah, I'm with you there. A career 53.3 true shooting percentage across 16 playoff games for RJ Barrett. Not awesome. I'm also going playoffs oof for RJ Barrett. These things can change, right? We're talking about how it exists now in the moment. Obviously, things can change. The context can change, et cetera, et cetera. I feel like I have to caveat everything I say with Barrett because people lose your minds if you're not super nice to him. But this is just the reality we operate in. The playoffs are extremely high level, man, and it's you got to be up to the level on both ends of the floor. Let's quickly run through the sort of next set of guys in the Raptors rotation. Ochai Agbaji, Gradey Dick, Jakob Poeltl. Any of these guys, outside of being the 7th and 8th men on the Nuggets, do you see a role for any of these guys in any of these playoff teams? And maybe it's more of a future-looking thing with Dick and Walter in particular, although none of these guys have played playoff minutes just yet. But maybe it's sort of a projecting out a year or 2 from now. Do you find them to be playoff-proof or playoffs? Oof. Let's rattle off quickly. Let's start with Ochai.
Ochai, I think in the as the 7th, 8th man, I would trust him to be playoff proof. I think that the way he's simplified his game, he's just taking threes, he's just taking shots at the rim, and playing solid enough defense, not great defense, but solid enough. I'm pretty sure Steve Kerr would rather have him in the rotation than Jonathan Kuminga.
I think he'd rather have me in the rotation than Jonathan Kuminga.
So yeah, I think Ochai. There's several teams that you could look at where he would fit a role. I think even Cleveland would take him.
Another one of those Cavs guys, just like cycle him in as that 3. That'd be not so bad at all.
Exactly. Yeah. So Ochai, in that role, I would consider him to be playoff proof.
Yeah, I agree too. You don't want to overextend him, but 7th or 8th guy, that guy can be part of your trusted 8, which is kind of what teams are shooting for in the postseason for sure. Gradey Dick, I think, would be playoffs oof right now. Just the defense would be a thing that every offense would be like, oh, that guy, let's go ruin his day every single time down the floor. The shooting could be very viable, but in certain matchups, obviously, that's going to be very matchup dependent. Are you going playoffs oof for Gradey Dick at the moment?
Yeah, for now. I mean, realistically, he's just a question mark. But I think, based on the defense alone, the way, teams not only attack rookies, but the way teams attack weak defenders, he'd be facing a lot of issues, and he'd probably get kicked off the court pretty damn quick.
It might get ugly if Gradey Dick were to get extended run in the playoffs today on May 7th, 2025. Jakob Poeltl, probably similar because rookies get ruined in the playoffs all the time. But I got to say, This dude has future playoff-proof guy written all over him. Two-way play, creation, three-point shooting, defense. This dude's going to be playoff-proof, I think, as early as next season, man. I'm super in on Jakob Poeltl. It sounds like you are too.
Yeah, man. I am all in on Jakob Poeltl. I think he's going to have a very solid NBA career. I think that, I think there's teams that would like live with some of his mistakes just because of the way he plays and, the smarts that he plays with and like just trust him to learn on the fly. That's not to say that, he might have a couple of games where it's like 5 minutes in, it's like, all right, man, this isn't working out.
You're too weak to be getting switched onto Julius Randle every time. This is not going well.
Yeah. But I do think that he is one guy who I would expect to learn quickly and really build up, into someone who can be a starter level guard in this league.
Yeah, I think like 3-4 years from now, you're looking at him as someone who every team in the playoffs would be like, yeah, we could use that guy big time. And maybe some of them starting, right? Like, I think that's the track he's on, just with the two-way stuff he brings. Very into it. He's got it, man. He's got the thing. He's got the stuff. He's got the juice, the sauce, et cetera, et cetera. Speaking of having sauce and juice, it's our pal Big V. Thanks so much for being on the show, man. This was a lot of fun. Do you have anything you want to promote for the good people out there?
This was a lot of fun. Usual stuff, Raptors in 7, Basketball Insiders, Sportscasting. I ranked the top 10 players of the first round a few days ago. So if you love your rankings, you can go check that out, and you can find all my work at Vivek M. Jacob on the socials.
Go do that. You can find me at woodleyshawn.bsky.social on the B-Sky. You can join the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. Free to join. As always, you can find us on Instagram as well. I've been pretty bad at posting on Instagram, but I'll probably get around to it a little bit more here, especially once we get to lottery night. And by the way, the guy on your screen, Big V, he's going to be on the lottery stream on Monday. We're going to go on YouTube. We're going to talk probably like a half hour before, just shoot the breeze a little bit, get ready, get excited, build up our hopes to be dashed, and then we'll do kind of pivot into a full episode right after and just kind of talk about the lottery and what it means going forward. So you have that to look forward to next week. Join us on the YouTube channel live, and we'll have some fun watching the lottery together. And that'll be it. We'll leave it there. We'll talk to you again on Thursday with another episode of Locked On Raptors. Thanks for hanging. Bye-bye. Almost banked it in.